Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on this Monday Bulletin, I'm joined by Tony Haggerty. Massive weekend, Tony, not only in the world of Celtic, but when you consider the tenure of Ange Postecoglou, everything that's happened since he's come in, all the lead up to that appointment as well, and at the first time of asking, he's got us into a cup final. We really need to take a bit of time just to talk about that. First and foremost, Tony. I mean, we follow every moment, every step of the way. We're on the ACSOM Bulletin at 12:30 every weekday, every game at night time or the weekend. We cover that before, during and after the game as well. So every single move has been looked at and scrutinised, and we're focused on it. And there's been good and there's been bad. But the bottom line is we're nearing the end of November. We've been in one competition, we're in the final. We've been in Europe, we're going to be in Europe beyond Christmas, and we're 4 points behind league leaders, Rangers, in the title. So just a wee moment to talk about Ange before we move on to the game itself, Tony.
If I had a hat, I'd tip it to Ange. In fact, I've got plenty of hats, but I'll do it anyway. It's just a measure of the progress, isn't it, that he's made with the team. I mean, inherited a shambles, and pundits or whatever you want to call me, journalists like myself, got annoyed because he wasn't winning straight away. But I got all the extenuating circumstances, but I just wanted him to realise that at Celtic it was all about winning. And Saturday was one of those occasions. He knew it was all about winning. Didn't play particularly well or great, but they were never in any danger. And it is kudos to him because he's slowly but surely and his own words, methodically building something. Mm-hmm. You can see it, and you've seen it. You've been watching it from its infancy, and it's actually to get to this point. Celtic supporters are all smiling today. They've had a good weekend, but they've all went into their work and smiled, or wherever they go on a Monday morning. And the great thing, I think he's brought a bit of joy back to Celtic. He really has. He brought a bit of identity back as well. And we said before, from a guy who's travelled halfway across the world to do what he has accomplished in 5 months, it's remarkable. But in his own words, he'll turn around and say, "We've achieved nothing. We've done nothing." I wrote yesterday in the Celtic way, he'll not be content just to get to the final. Doesn't want to go to Hampden and smell the hot dogs and, December the 19th. Complete the job. Go become a winner. He wants to win silverware. This is his dream. This is something that he's always coveted. A job in Europe at a team that's successful and wins. And he wants to be a major part of that himself. So I think you can only applaud the job that he's done. Yeah, we're 4 points behind Rangers at this minute in time. But, if Celtic continue to play the way that they are domestically and in Europe as well, you can see them eating into that lead, can't you, at the top of the table?
Yeah, I think we had a couple of discussions over the last few weeks with events elsewhere within Scottish football, and we were talking about how that affects or otherwise our business in the January transfer window. And I think when you look over the piece in terms of the January transfer window, what it should always be, Tony, is, if you're organised, is you should be looking towards the European qualification rounds the following season. You should have one eye on that anyway. So you should be able to fill any gaps with one eye onto the next season, because the games come so quickly. We've never got into the groove of doing that. We've always left it so that we're going into the European qualification underprepared. And that's been one of the biggest bugbears of us as Celtic fans on this podcast. So we were talking about the January transfer and the importance of that in terms of us being the chasers, which is something we're not accustomed to in the last decade. This is the first time in 10 years we're going into a January transfer thinking we need to retain the title. It's not that we're in a title dogfight, we need to win it, we need to retain it. So I think regardless of what was going on elsewhere, the view on the January transfer window might have been different anyway. But I think when you look at what he has done, what he's achieved, Ange Postecoglou, since coming in, and as you say, coming into a very, very difficult situation, and the makings of which were not his. With all that taken into account, we've said on this podcast, you've got to back them. And what I meant by that is I expect Celtic to lose 3 or 4 in the January transfer window. And they guys, although they're not first picks, they will be classed as first team players because we do have quite a small squad when you look at it. So before you do anything, you've got to fill those gaps. So let's say we lose 3. I don't think it's good enough just to replace the 3 because at this moment in time, the squad's not deep enough. We don't have that depth. And I think that there's been quite a few occasions this season where that's been evident. When we're firing on all cylinders and everybody's fit, that's great. We've not had that this season. We still don't have it. I mean, we've gone into the game there at the weekend with Starfelt out, Julien out, Giacomakis out. You know, we've never gone into a game with a full complement of players. And some might say, well, that's never going to be the case. But I think, particularly Celtic, we've been really hammered with injuries this season and last. We'll get onto that when we talk about Jamesy Forrest. But I just think there's so much importance on this January window that it's not going to be good enough to bring in 3 or 4 if, indeed, we offload 3 players or 4 players. We need to actually, you know, get a deeper squad. And then that goes back to something Colin Watt said a couple of weeks ago, which seemed quite radical. We need 6 players in January. Well, if we lose 3, then perhaps we do need 6, Tony. And I think when we're talking about the game and we're breaking the game down, some of the positions will become clear. But the main thing I'm trying to say here is the time is now. The time is now. We're going to January, cup final behind us at that stage, still in Europe. Who knows where we'll be in terms of the league placings by then, because I think we're in for a very interesting few weeks ahead with the fixtures. But we must back Ange, and I don't just mean by a couple of loanees.
I believe the manager will be... The manager's in the strongest position yet now, isn't he? To play his hand and go to the board and say, right, this is where I want to take us. This is what I'm thinking. This is a list of players of who I would like. If you can get me him, and him, I'll be a happy man. And he told you himself last week when he spoke to fan media, he said he works methodically. He's always thinking, so he's always thinking ahead. So he will be thinking about the Champions League qualifiers and the possibility of Celtic maybe winning the title and being able to strengthen further. But that's clearly the way he's operating. I think he was hinting at that. He's telling you as well where he thinks he can get players. He mentioned Japan, South Korea and Iran. So I don't think for a minute that he's not in his own mind got this list and he's saying to the Celtic board, this is my list. How I would want X amount of players off this list. These are my top picks. 6. Say it's 6. These are my top 6 picks. Some of them you've already seen that they've maybe been linked already. He might produce a curveball and it might not be them, but you'd like to think that there's a couple of them that you think Hitate, Maeda, you like the look of them, or he likes the look of them, and trust his judgment now. I would trust his judgment implicitly. He's brought Kyogo, and I think he's probably been instrumental in Jota as well, because they're his kind of players, aren't they? That attack-minded players who can cause damage in the final third and play that slick football the way he wants it. And also as well, if they conduct a bit of business for Jota in January, you would give them kudos as well, and Ange might want to force that through. Remember, before the August window shut, he said maybe I wasn't forceful enough. I think this will be the time when he will be forceful enough, because he's got a great chance here, and the Celtic supporters feel it. He feels it, and you have to capitalise on this momentum that he's building, and it's building, and it's building, and it's building. What a month Celtic have got the next few weeks leading up to Christmas. You know that you say they've got a cup final, they've got a game against Rangers before as the window opens. You know, it could be good news week all up until then. But what they have to do is turn the screw. No more dropping salary points. Be ruthless, be clinical, be efficient. And another thing they can't afford to do is to underestimate Hibs in this cup final. They have to beat Hibs, and they have to give them all their due respect. You know, and with that momentum comes confidence. Not a swagger, and it's not arrogance, and there should never be that attached to Celtic. You respect your opponent at all times. Even the great Jock Stein said he worried about the fact that any opponent could beat Celtic on any given day. So, but if you're professional and you're clinical and you go about your business with a ruthless efficiency, then you can see you're starting to believe more and more, aren't you? that good things could happen this season.
I think you must have felt it on Saturday, Tony, at the game. You must have felt that there is a momentum building, there is a belief building.
I didn't feel at any time that Celtic were going to get beaten that game. I thought it would come with Joe Hart, maybe giving everybody...
we will have a wee discussion about Joe. We need to talk about Joe.
Yeah, but I still felt that if they kept plugging the way they would create, Jota was on for them. I always thought they would get something. Kyogo, as much as he maybe didn't do much, he was still running. He was running for the cause.
He drags, you're right. Yeah, he drags him about the park.
He was, and you can't underestimate just that work ethic. See that team ethic they had, and you've spoken about him as well. James McCarthy was on the park for 13 minutes, but it's the best 13 minutes he's had in a Celtic jersey since he came. Right? People can dispute that all they want, but he actually was a presence there, and I thought, do you know what, James? That was your stage, and you showed a wee glimpse of what the future could be if you get a regular run of games.
Yeah.
Forrest coming on. Everybody knows about Forrest. He's so much of an unsung hero, is Forrest. But I wrote, again on the Celtic Way today, Forrest is something that Ange wants to turn every Celtic player into, a serial winner.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mentality that he needs in that team. Forrest has got 19 winners' medals. 19. I mean, that's colossal amount of winners' medals.
It's incredible. I mean, when you look at his roll call, last season was just his second season without a winner's medal. The other one was his first season in which he only played 2 games. So that shows you just how successful he's been as a Celt, since breaking into the side. And again, we will be talking about James McCarthy, Jamesy Forrest. We'll be talking about Joe Hart, Bertie Auld. We'll be talking about red cards that never were, Near Beaton, Jota, David Turnbull, how to break down sides like St Johnstone, and we'll have a look ahead to Bayer Leverkusen. So anybody who's joining us in the comment section, any thoughts whatsoever on any of these subjects, get throwing them in. Michael McDonald, I love Mondays. So do I. So do I, Michael, especially on a Monday like today. When we went into the cup final, we've said it time and time again, the amount of emotion that's attached. And some people might say to me, it's the same supporting any football club. Well, I don't know. I only support one football club. But the amount of emotion attached to supporting Celtic, Tony, is quite unreal, and it's palpable at times. And particularly when we lose one of our greats. And we did lose the great Bertie Auld. And I was looking at that game leading up to it, talking about the game with Lawrence on Saturday. And we looked back to the 1969 League Cup final where Celtic won 1-0 against St Johnstone. So it was relevant. Same opponents as Saturday. The goal, of course, was scored by the one and only Bertie Auld, the famous number 10. So we were back at Hampden on Saturday to face the same opponents this time in the same competition, but in the semi-final. And again, we win 1-0. Lo and behold, number 10 did score, Tony, because we were all wearing the number 10 shorts in tribute to the late, great Bertie Auld. And I just wanted to take a moment to discuss and praise those who were involved in that quite incredible display in memory of Bertie Auld. I mean, that was absolutely astonishing, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, as you said, these were palpable. It was breathtaking. There was a real poignancy to Saturday. And you also felt that they were just, Celtic were never going to accept defeat anyway, regardless. And they were being driven on by the spirit of Bertie. And, his buzzword was always entertain. Might not have entertained per se, but Jota got the memo. You know what I mean? He at least tried to entertain. But there's that great picture which I shared with the group on Saturday of the pyrotechnics and Kyogo's.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's a stunning shot. Mm-hmm. It's an absolutely stunning shot. But as you say, the tribute and the emotion of the occasion, and just for Bertie, I mean, his family must have really swelled with pride. Their hearts must have swelled with pride to see that. That he will never be forgotten. Bertie Auld, he's just a Celtic legend in the truest sense of the word. Played for the greatest ever Celtic team, bar none. And what the feats that they achieved, that'll never be repeated. No Scottish club will ever win the European Cup / Champions League again. It just won't happen. And, but it's all right saying, we're having a tribute. but my goodness, what a tribute that was. It was unbelievable. And as you say, I just think there's something about Celtic, they get it. It gets under your skin, and once it's there,
Yeah.
it never leaves. That's it. And
What other clubs would you say, Tony? Because I know you've covered football for 20 odd years. What other clubs do you think share that? I mean, there has been an argument made that Liverpool might have that kind of same vibe.
My first port of call, yep, because they get it, and I think there's a deep ingrained passion about their club as well. I would actually say Dortmund to a point, because I think they have the yellow wall, don't they, stuff like that, and it's. But I'm like you, Barcelona to an extent, but I wrote it in my book that I said you can only support one club, so you don't really know about the passions of these other clubs and their supporters. You get it that they'll feel the same as you because it's their club, and every supporter will say, "Oh, this is my club," but I don't know. Maybe you are biased, but there's just something about being a Celtic supporter, especially the emotion, the history, the passion attached to it. It is something different.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And to quote Kevin, there is something romantic about it. I think we're all romantics at heart. And
the only person that doesn't think that he's an old romantic's his wife.
Well, there you go. In
But he's certainly a football romantic.
You think of the amount of the screeds and screeds of writing that's been written about Glasgow Celtic Football Club, and will continue to be written about Glasgow Celtic Football Club. It's my occupation to write about Celtic Football Club every day of my working life, to talk about them every day of my working life. It is the most honoured and privileged position I could ever be in. And you know what? I love it. And most of the time it comes from there, doesn't it? When you're asked to write and charged to write about this football club, it comes from there. Because if it comes from there, then it wouldn't be worth putting down in paper. But it comes from there. It's just you're born with it, right? You say you don't choose your football club; it chooses you. That's kind of right. When I was old, Kenny Dalglish was my first Celtic hero. Father was a massive Celtic fan. But when you're born, it's a rites of passage. It's handed down to you by someone. But once it's there, that's it. It never leaves you. And you can have an affinity for other football clubs, but you cannot support them the way you support Celtic. And it's inexplicable. For a man who deals with words and words of his currency, it's very hard to explain that. It's very hard to put your finger on the pulse of what it is that just motivates you as a Celtic supporter. Possibly days like this, when you wake up, you're smiling. The gentleman came in and said it's a happy Monday. You live for moments like that. That's why you're a football supporter. Yeah, there's ups and there's downs. It's that's the nature of following a football club. But there's a real excitement taking it right back to what you were saying about Ange and what he's building. And you kind of felt like that when Martin O'Neill came in, when Brendan Rodgers came in. There's certain moments in time, well, in my lifetime, where you think, and I'm not saying he's going to be as successful as Martin O'Neill or Brendan Rodgers, but there's that feeling of momentum, that feeling of togetherness. There's a unity and a bond there, and it stretches from the manager and the players, backroom staff, medical staff, and now it's filtering through onto the stands and the supporters. We're all getting it now. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And seeing 5 months from since he's taken over, that's an incredible place to be in before Christmas, because he inherited a shambles and a club that was rudderless, directionless, and motionless. And you were sitting thinking, whoever comes in next is going to has a massive job in their hands, and he still does. But the way he has steered it and the way he speaks, I said it on Friday, that he's a real statesman. You're actually proud to have this man in charge of your football club. He speaks so well, he conducts himself well, and you are now comparing him to people like Steen and O'Neill and Rodgers in the way he presents themselves. And to you and I, the Celtic managerial position is the highest office that you can hold as a manager because you support the football club. He's a representation of you and I, and that's the way I would always want to be represented, by a man and a person like that. And I think Ange's, I don't know how he's grasped it so quickly, but my goodness, what a job he's doing. And long may that continue, because we feed off that and we feel good about ourselves, and we feel good about ourselves because of him. He's gave us our kind of respectability back after the debacle of last season. And in a short space of time, he's actually gave us our club back. We feel part of something very important now, special.
There's a couple of wee things. First thing I'm going to say is we will be joined by a very special guest at some point. So if I'm looking to my right, it's because I'm just getting the dials ready. Because we're all always organised here at a State of Mind studio. And here we go. In relation to that, there is obviously the Holy Trinity that has been spoken about previously, Tony. Part of that is that group of people that you mentioned with regards to the management and the players and the backroom team. Part of that is us as fans. And the third tier, or the third pillar, if you like, is the suits, the blazers, the boards at Celtic Football Club. And that's the one key element at the moment that isn't part of this momentum building, because it seems as though every time something good happens, there is something just around the corner where they're ready to pull the rug from under your feet. And I guess that is probably why, in many ways, I do feel a wee bit concerned about January. Now, I'm going to invite our guest in by asking her to speak first. Amy Canavan, can you hear us?
I can't hear you.
Tony, did you hear that response?
I heard that response.
You did. That's great. I'll get the visuals in just a wee moment once we get the discussion going again. But Amy Canavan is in the room, and we'll get Amy's screen up in a wee moment. You were talking about James A. Forrest there. One final point on the Bertie Auld tribute. I felt it breathed new life into the team. Now, maybe I'm just being that football romantic for a moment, Tony. 67 minutes, and obviously there's the tribute. 5 minutes later, James A. Forrest opens the score and scores the only goal of the game. And I thought back to, the empty stands last season, and this theory that it affected Celtic in one way, it affected Rangers in another way. And during the season, I'm thinking, yeah, of course we are the 12th man, but isn't that the same with every club, etc.? I'm now starting to look back and think, wow. I mean, I saw that on Saturday as a massive moment of the game. 67 minutes, and the fans breathed new life into that side. Do you buy that?
Oh, you saw it for yourself. It just lifts people. The players knew that the fans, regardless of the fact that maybe they weren't playing particularly well, they hadn't found the breakthrough, but the fans were with them the whole game. They were not going to turn against them, and they just knew that at any given moment they would create something. And that was in the 67th minute. They showed them, look, we're roaring you on. Do it for us. Do it for yourselves. Do it for Bertie. And James Forrest and Jota clearly got the memo. And I'm not saying the others didn't get the memo, but he was just kind of Forrest, another special Hampden moment. He's got a bit of a litany of them now, so it's
He does.
And as I say, the most decorated guy at the club. Yeah, he's not the most loved player at the club, is he? If you're going to be perfectly honest, and you say to yourself, why is that? But I always said that he's. And I wrote it today. He's pretty shy for a wide guy. He's not a kind of braggadocio sort and saying we're going to do this and going to do that. Just to talk on the park, and and he does it well. And his contribution to Celtic success down the years it's immeasurable. And as I say, he's someone who everybody in the dressing room will probably look up to, because you can turn around and say, "Look at my trophy haul.
Put your medals on the table." That's what you can say.
The person shows your medals, and he can certainly do that. But he's also a very good footballer, a talented footballer. And that's kind of largely gone by and by, because a lot of Celtic supporters maybe underestimate what he brings to the table. I certainly don't. He's a creator of goals and a scorer of goals, and he's a scorer of important goals for Celtic, if you check back.
Absolutely. Now, Amy, can you hear Tony?
I can hear Tony. I can
Tony?
just hear you in the studio.
Tony, can you hear Amy?
I can't. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we
and
have
another-
no technological issues in the studio. Now, you've led us into James Forrest. I want to have a wee word about James, and I'll bring this to yourself first, Amy. James made his least amount of appearances since breaking into the side last season, 17. And in his absence, for me, I thought the club seemed a wee bit directionless. I mean, it's one of the things where we look at a player, maybe take him for granted, and it showed last season just how integral he is to Celtic's success. Now, Abada came in very, very huge impact as a 19-year-old. I know he's now turned 20, but he's gone off the boil a wee bit. And I think that Jamesy Forrest coming in at the weekend, 69 minutes on the clock, scores a goal in 73 minutes, changed the game. Is it now time for you, Amy, to give Abada a wee rest and bring Forrest in as your first pick on the right?
We've kind of spoke about it a lot over the last few weeks, perhaps on the Abada, I don't want to say downfall, but, Kyogo and Yota, they've just been so, hitting the heights, and Abada's just gone a little bit quiet. And we've kind of went, well, James Forrest is going to come back. He's going to be pushing. That might give him, that little bit ignitation of fire, really, that he needs. And I think that the impact that Forrest has made from the bench at the weekend there, so crucially, and as Tony alluded to just before me, he kind of does it always on the big stage. He revels being there. So I think now, if Forrest is ready to start a game, which I'd like to hope, if he can come on from the bench, it means that he is in a fit enough position. I don't know, perhaps a few more just little appearances to get back up to the level of fitness that Ange Postecoglou's style requires. But I think, heading into this really hectic period, I think we will be seeing a lot more of James Forrest, and I think it's right. I've seen quite a lot. There's a little bit of worry that he's maybe lost his pace a little bit. He's also just getting older. But I hope that, just a little bit more time will get him back to the James Forrest that we do know and love. And Tony's right, he kind of still remains almost like the scapegoat, and I'm not really too sure why. I don't think it was spoke about enough last season as to just how crucial James Forrest's omission really was from the squad, and from the match day team, because the impact that he has, it might not always be the assist, but it's the bringing down the balls, the beating to the byline. He might not be the assist maker, but he's always in the build up. He's always playing such a crucial part. He's got such a great ability to naturally see him on the right, but his impact on the left is quite amazing. Over the last few seasons, I think perhaps it was perhaps in the later stages of Rodgers' time at Celtic, that he flung him out onto the left, but he was just still so impactful.
Yeah.
And not many wingers can do that and go and do it on the other side. And you kind of think, wow, we've maybe missed James Forrest being out there just as something a little bit different, cutting in. He loves to cut in.
Outside of the right boot, he loves one of them, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. He went through a little spatty scoring against that. I remember the Rangers go well. But I think, going back to your original point, I think it's massive for Celtic. It's massive for Ange that he's now back in selection. Keeping him fit is going to be crucial. But, there's that picture that's been doing the rounds, in the celebration of Forrest. Callum McGregor's right beside them. They just get it. They get the club, they get everything. They've been here since they were bairns. They really just know it inside and out, and it's fantastic. And I think it's going to bring Abada on. I'm saying that he's going to come in and perhaps replace him, but I think Abada can learn a lot from him. This is a guy that's been at Celtic. He's been kind of what Abada's going through right now, kind of a dull patch or a lull. Forrest has been there many a time, but he's came back, and now he's got an autobiography and everything now. He's right up there. So I think for all parties, it's great that Forrest is back.
I do remember actually when he was writing that book, and I spoke to the author who came into the studio to do a show with Paul Sheridan, and it's Selling the Jerseys, which is a tremendous show, it's quite irregular, but when it comes onto the channel, it's brilliant. And we did speak to Joe, and Joe was saying that when he was talking to James Forrest, what became abundantly clear was he wasn't even sure if the gaffer liked him. Now, the gaffer being at that time Neil Lennon, who had given him his opportunity in the first team. Neil Lennon, of course, was looking after the young boys when Forrest was playing. So he knew all about him when he eventually took over as the manager, and he gave James his debut. And, he was that guy who didn't have the cockiness to even know Tony, or take for granted, rather, that the gaffer liked him and actually rated him as a footballer. And, you know, he was coming into 28, 29 when he wrote the book. He's now 30. Amy says he's getting older. That's no old, by the way, Amy, just for your information. He's only 30. When I talk about him, he's only 30. I'll tell you what, and I'm not comparing him, Tony, but no one has used their backside in a Celtic jersey as well as James Forrest since Kenny Dalglish, because that is one of his greatest attributes.
Kenny Dalglish was the best at it. The other one who's got it to use their asset like that is John McGinn. John McGinn does it very well.
He does very well, yes.
Yeah, you know, so that's in Forrest is the same. Forrest
is there a stat for that? How's that measured in data?
I don't know. I would have to ask Al Morrison. I don't even know what you would call it. Expected what?
I don't know. I'm sure you can come up with something there, Tony.
Yes, leave it with me. But yeah, he never looks 30, does he? James Forrest is a perpetual kid, or he looks a kid. You know, he's always. Yet the one thing that Ange was able to rely on Saturday when he flung him on was his experience. Mm-hmm. I made the point that's why James Forrest will be vital moving forward, because on Saturday of the starting 11, Hart, McGregor, Beaton and Juranovic were the only 4 players that had what you would call so-called big game experience. Right? The rest didn't. So you look at that team, and that's why it's a cracking result, because they were playing against a team that had won the previous 2 cup finals. We're on an 11-game cup unbeaten run, right? So they had to cope with that first and foremost, right? Some of them hadn't even played at Hampden before, and then the emotion of the occasion for Bertie, you know, it's easy to play that occasion and not play the actual football match, and you're up against a robust, physical team who had proved themselves winners. So that game on Saturday had all the ingredients to go wrong. You know, there was people predicting 3 and 4-0 for Celtic. You know, maybe it was never going to be like that, but you had to find a way to win that. And I think if any of all the cup games that they've played so far, that'll be the toughest, because they can now go out in the final and relax on it a bit and maybe play the football that we've been watching in spells this season at different times. And I'll include the 40 minutes at Easter Road when they blew Hibs away in that first half an hour against Betis, when they got themselves into a 2-goal lead and Jota misses a sitter for 3, that kind of thing. The scintillating 6-0 wins in the game against Hearts, the 3-2 cup game as well. You know, so it's there, and it's there in abundance. But that occasion was just fraught, and there's nerves attached to that. Players are only human, Paul. You know, there is nerves attached to that. So that was a big, that was a massive match in the context of Celtic season, not just for the players, but for the manager as well. Can you overcome that hurdle? They did. They ground it out, got the result. Nobody cares about semi-finals. As long as you win, the end result is the be-all and end-all. And they won that. Now, as I said, Ange will be like, right. And I said, you know, Forrest will be going for his 20th medal, whatever it is. And Ange will say, and I said in the Celtic way, he'll request them to do that, put it in his hipper. And I said, in fact, scrap that. He'll no request it. He'll demand it now. Ange will demand that Celtic go and win that final now. That's it. That's the standard that you set. That's the bar. That's where you raise the bar to. There's an expectation, and Ange gets that, and the players are getting that, and they got it on Saturday, which was a good thing for me, because I didn't think they were ever going to lose a goal. But you know what can happen: the bounce of a ball, a decision, you know, a defensive mistake, something like that. But they showed they had the bottle and the stomach for that battle on Saturday, and it was quite a battle. You know, you were saying you're going to speak about something, but the elbow in Welsh, how that went unpunished, is beyond me. But,
well, that leads us nicely into that. I mean, I had said at half time that they certainly were looking at Sean Rooney as their target. They were playing a lot of balls into Rooney, and we know what he can do in the air. I quite like him as a player, actually, and obviously he's got that connection to Bob and Benny Rooney, who had been at Celtic previously. Benny, of course, played in the 1969 League Cup final for St Johnstone. A wee bit of trivia for you. Now, the thing with that, though, is I looked at that particular incident because, yes, I'm banging on about it. and I'm going to list them because we've got a list, I believe, of offences involving Celtic players that did not and should have resulted in a red card. So this is the 6th in the list as far as I'm concerned. If anybody else who's watching it on any of the social media platform can think of any others, and I'm not turning it into a greeting kind of bulletin, but we've got to mention this. We've got to call it out. We've won the game. Rooney on Welsh is a red card every single day of the week. Welsh must have suffered concussion because he's been taken off with no visible injury. So you're thinking he's maybe been out cold for a second or two. So you've got to get him off the park for his own safety. Let's run back through a few of the others. Kane, who I think got a few tough challenges himself at the weekend, but previously at Celtic Park, Cameron Carter-Vickers was on the end of an assault by Kane, who should have been sent off. Against Dundee United, we had Fuchs on McCarthy, Siegrist on Abada, both sending offs. Gogic on Rogic in the game that you mentioned earlier on, Tony. You know, I just felt that there was 3 offences there, and you know, at least two of them were yellow cards, if not worse. And Halliday on McGregor in the opening league game of the season. That's 6. Not one of them was sent off. I'll come to you first, Amy. Now, we could go on all day about refereeing in Scotland, but I mean, we're only in November. That's 6 red cards that weren't given. Are you concerned? Let's frame this question. Are you concerned at the lack of protection that Celtic players are getting from the officials?
I'm concerned at, the lack of protection that Celtic players are getting. I think I'm also just concerned at the lack of protection a lot of players are getting across Scotland. You know, I think the stand of the refereeing we go on about it is just so poor now. There were a few dubious decisions in the entirety of the game on Saturday night. I think later on, I think it was just, Nick Walsh was just handing out cards willy-nilly. At the death to St Johnstone, Callum Davison was getting booked. I could understand his frustration, to be honest. I don't understand how that really was a booking or showing off a card to Davison, whatever you want to call it. The Rooney one, Rooney did get booked from that, didn't he? So the referee's seen it. That for me is actually more worrying, more than anything, because if nothing happened, then you can go, right, ref didn't see it. Well, it's an error that he didn't see it because it's a worry. But the fact that he has seen it, but only deemed that high elbow to the neck, borderline cheek, as only a yellow card, that's assault. Paul, you do that to me in the street. My God. I just think that's kind of the inconsistencies that I worry about. The fact that he has even seen it, but that's what he merits as a yellow card. I think you can ask for starters, really, how Walsh has even got the semi-final in the first place. It's meant to be like a massive privilege. The best decision makers, the best referees in the country. That's what your reward is. You get the big games, you get to perform on the big stage. Because as much as it's a big game for the players, it's a massive occasion for the referees, and that has to be remembered, because it is the big stage. Perhaps it shows how poor the standard has been all season, that Nick Walsh is probably, one of the better ones already. How he was even given the Celtic game after that, the Carter-Vickers incident in particular, is kind of beyond me. But then you look at the other referees that were part of the league at the weekend. Everybody is aware of the Bobby Madden decision in the Aberdeen-Dundee United game, with Ojo.
Astonishing.
So it is absolutely astonishing. So in the same breath where I'm saying, I don't think that Nick Walsh deserves this occasion, he's kind of... Do you really want it to be Bobby Madden? Is it the lesser of the two evils? The standard is absolutely shocking. But in all honesty, I have not really touched on it too much, but I now, I look at the Lowland League and I see the standard of the refereeing at that level. I'm not saying you would jump right from the Lowland League to the SPFL, but the standard down there is shocking. As I've said before, my dad's a referee. He came along to a Bonnery game with me a couple of weeks ago. I was up in the gantry working, but I can hear him directly below me. And, he is going absolute ballistic at these decisions. The worst thing is, we got in the car afterwards and went, my God, Amy, that referee, that was shocking. And I went, you know what, that isn't even one of the worst ones. Like, I've not even really took notice actually how bad he was, because to me, look what I saw last week, I saw the week before. I don't know what is so wrong in Scotland. I don't know if the education's not there, if the visibility is not there, if there's a pathway, but something needs to be done, because even from the lowest levels to the highest levels, across the board, it is so poor. We spoke about before, does there need to be a fast track for former players? something needs to be trialled, and I don't think VAR is the answer, because it's the same Muppets that are going to be operating it. And right now they are Muppets, it's cartoon characters, because it's all just a laugh. Week in, week out, we're talking about them, and not just Celtic fans. There will be St Johnstone's fans who are talking about, at the death, why there were those bookings. Aberdeen fans will rightly be going absolutely berserk about Bobby Madden right now. There'll be decisions from the Hibs game yesterday as well. Kevin Clancy, there was a few dubious ones. But it's just right across the board. The standard is really, really poor.
The points that Amy makes, Tony, I think are so valid, because the issue is, if not Nick Walsh, then who? Because you look across the other fixtures. I mean, that decision to send off, it's actually resulted in Aberdeen calling out the refereeing decision. It's not just a Celtic issue now. There's other clubs throughout this season who are calling this out. I mean, Hearts have called it out. Dundee have called it out this season. And the standard is nowhere near good enough.
Because they're sick of the ineptitude and they're concerned for the safety of their players. And quite rightly, they should be. Somebody's going to get seriously hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because referees only stamping down on, foul play and aggressive play and, and that kind of behaviour. So, I mean, that's a straight red card for Rooney on Saturday, Bertie Auld Walsh. But somewhere, and it's not just you've highlighted 6 Celtic instances where all of them should have been a red card. I get that. But, canvass any other clubs. You see Aberdeen, Dundee United, Hearts, Motherwell, Hibs, you name it, they'll all have a litany of offences where they feel the same. And so, this is the time. Call it out, because the standard of refereeing in this country it's just shocking. It's glaring ineptitude. It really is poor. And as Amy says, what is the answer? He's been talking about it for long and weary, but it seems to be this season in particular. And season's gone past, but this season in particular, it's just rank rotten officiating. I mean, seriously. Is VAR the answer? Don't know. Maybe eradicate some of the ones that with technology, but my goodness, the Bobby Madden one on Saturday with Ojo.
It's embarrassing, Tony. You imagine being a football fan anywhere else watching that, because everybody's seen it now and they must be thinking, what a joke this league is. I mean, we're working hard not to be this tin pot league, and then you see that and you think, well, how can you even argue?
Do you go to your job, and you get pushed like that, and you're the one who's reprimanded for it? It's a farce. It is an absolute
ridiculous.
farce.
And I've seen Saturday as well. I think Murray Davison got a yellow card, didn't he?
Yeah, he did late on.
Yeah, late on, and he was like that. See, Nick, well, I mean, I think it beggars belief. I don't actually know what happened, but I just saw Murray Davison's reaction, and I thought, what's happened there? What did he actually do to warrant that? So I'm not just saying it. Amy said as well, but there was some bad decisions that he gave against St Johnstone, or he didn't give St Johnstone as well. So it was just a terrible performance. You're not asking for, I've said this before, you're not asking for favours. You're just asking them to ref the game and be consistent in your decision making, and be authoritative, in your decision. Be confident in what you're doing, and allow for the occasion. No, I get that, but somebody elbows you in the face, it's a standing off. Somebody kicks you when you're lying on the ground as if they're beating you and you're lying in the street. It's a sending off.
Yes.
Somebody jumps into a challenge and catches you in the ankle with no attempt to play the ball. It's a sending off. These things are happening in front of your eyes. So what I would ask is, what are you seeing there?
Yeah. You
have to explain what you're seeing there or what you're not seeing there.
And let's not forget, Kyogo got booked for getting hacked.
Yeah, the book, he touches the boy, and it's just.
And Kyogo got booked. It was ridiculous.
The minute it happened, though, and I know many of folk have been the same, but I said to my dad, he's going to book him. The minute Kyogo touched, I can't actually even remember who it was, but the minute he touched him, you just knew that it was going to happen, even though it's not, and we all know it's not. You've just came to that kind of conclusion now that it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Remember, I said after the Livingston penalty, or I asked the question during the week, are referees now going to target Kyogo? And what I meant by that is, the minute you go down like Kyogo went down, straight away people are going to target him as being at it. And I think that we've seen a wee bit of that against St Johnstone as well. It's like, as long as they can, see any misdemeanour whatsoever with Kyogo, they're going to book him. And that's something that we've called out before, and it's coming to fruition. Tony's already mentioned the big man at the back, who we love dearly in Joe Hart. Let's just get that one down first and foremost. There's the marker. We love Joe Hart, right? But 3 times, and one of them wasn't his fault, but we nearly sold the jerseys in our own box. 18 minutes with O'Halloran, 79 minutes, McCarthy's first kick of the ball. He doesn't know what's happening over his right shoulder. And 96 minutes at the very death. Big, gorgeous Joe himself. What do we do about this? This is a problem, Tony. We're trying to eradicate all this kind of stuff, because at that point, St Johnstone come back into the game at 96 and we've made the 3 late subs and everything else. I'm not as confident, going into extra time with a Jetty up front, for example, and so forth. And momentum seems to have come out of our play, especially if St Johnstone were to equalise. We really need to eradicate this out of our game, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Jim that coined the phrase heart attack football, and you can spell heart whatever way you want, H-E-R or H-A-R-T. Yeah, he took unnecessary risks on Saturday, didn't he? And I think, it is something that has to be addressed, doesn't it? It's been evident from very early on that that's the way Ange wants to play, and we're on board and we get all that, but there's just times when, you just have to shell it or hit it into the stands, or if you're just not comfortable, and just not take unnecessary risk. As you say, thankfully St Johnstone didn't score from one of those moments, but every Celtic supporter's heart was in their mouth when it happened on 3 separate occasions. Once you can legislate forward with O'Halloran, you think, got away with one there, because that was inches by the post, and there was frustration building at that, and you don't want that to seep right through to the support, and then in the 96th minute, you're just thinking, wow, just why? Just get it away or whatever. And I think you have to start taking, executive decisions in those kind of situations. If you feel under pressure, shell it or boot it, whatever, and then say to the manager, I didn't feel comfortable. I know it's not what you want, but I'm doing it to protect myself. And because you will lose a goal like that at some point. You're going to come a cropper. And then when you do come a cropper, everybody's going to say, why didn't they shell it? Why didn't they hit it into the stand? Why didn't they safety first? And, so rather than learn the hard way when it could be an important point or an important time in a game, as you say, the 96th minute when the substitutes were made, and, if St Johnstone had scored, then momentum might have been with them. Thankfully it wasn't, and it didn't. But, Joe, safeguard yourself from that. Just don't let it happen in the future. Eradicate it completely. And that's what I would do. If he's unsure at all, just hammer it long. We'll deal with it later, and if it comes back, then we'll build again. But there is no point, because he's such a fine goalkeeper, Joe Hart, and what he's brought since he came in has been absolutely wonderful. I just wouldn't want him to be remembered for doing something stupid like that.
No, you don't want that blooper reel. That's the big thing. Now, I think there's lots of positives to be taken by utilising the goalkeeper in such a way that we're utilising Joe Hart. I mean, you see it where instead of the ball travelling a further 50 yards back to Joe Hart, you see him 10 yards from the halfway line, picking the ball up, keeping the ball in, keeping the momentum going in the attack. So I get all that side of it. And in terms of, instead of just hoofing the ball up and hoping that we can win an aerial battle, keeping possession. It's like, the percentage of goals scored from a corner kick is so low. Someone cottoned onto that a few years back and said, you just play it back into the park. Don't try and cross it into the field. It's pointless. It's virtually pointless because you're not going to score. And it's a wee bit like that, whereby we want to get away from the ball back to the goalie. He hoofs it up the park, Pat Bonner style, and we've got to win the header. I get all that. But there is a time and a place. And this week's opponents on Thursday night. I thought that was the one game when we played Leverkusen at home that they really did pick up on it, and they showed us up for it as well. And I just want us to be the best we can be, because going forward, sometimes it's just a joy to watch. But that's the one thing in the back of my mind. If we just allow them an opportunity, it could be absolutely fatal. Now, we're going into that game and we'll be talking about some of the changes we might make. But before we do it, I think it's only right on today of all days to bring Paul Coltwell into the discussion. Paul's a Hibby, unless you hadn't noticed, right? But he's been on this podcast probably over the last year, and I'm trying to bring his comment up, but I don't know if he's been blocked because I can't bring it up. There you go, Paul. I never blocked you. Can Hibs win the final? Right, I'm bringing it up because you are always on ACSOM, and you're always civil. Even though you're a Hibs fan, that's fine. You're welcome to come in and have a civil discussion, Paul. And he's begging the question, and it's something you said at the very top of the show, Tony. I mean, I thought when we played Hibs at Easter Road, we completely bamboozled them for about 40 minutes. Second half, with hindsight, wasn't as great. It was a more controlled performance, Amy. But I do rate them. I think Jack Ross and co went through a tough patch recently, but I still rate him as a manager. And I think yesterday you seen what they can do. We know who the danger players are. It was great again for a number 10 in the weekend that we were remembering Bertie to score a hat-trick. That was lovely. Particularly the fact that he was in a Hibs jersey. What do we need to be aware of when we come up against it? It's going to be a different game than the Hibs we've seen at Easter Road the other week there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Martin Boyle is the danger man. We all know that. He's been the danger man for so long. He is arguably one of the best players in the SPFL this season. His goals to game ratio is absolutely superb, and that's coming from not an out and out striker. He is a wide man. I love to watch him. I really do. I think he's really kind of not like James Forrest, but he can do that cutting in, and hence the goals that he can score. He can go to the byline and deliver a great ball as well. But I just think Hibs are just really set up well right now. They're coming out of they've went 25 days without a game after their kind of COVID crisis. They've got a game again on Wednesday, then they've got a game next Wednesday again for catch up. It's a trip up to Dingwall on Wednesday. So the games are going to be coming thick and fast for them, and it's going to be a hectic Christmas period, even more than usual because of these games. But I think one of their biggest assets now is that their players are kind of returning from injury. Kevin Nisbet, that's one of the best performances I've seen from Nisbet in a long time. Albeit I only caught the tail end of the game before I had to shoot out again, but he looked so much more comfortable, kind of the Kevin Nisbet that why Hibs signed him. Paul, you ranted and raved about him when he was at Dunfermline, and kind of got that move to Hibs, but he kind of went on about a lull this season. I don't know if it was perhaps with the transfer talk. There was a lot of links, obviously, to Celtic. International call-ups have been coming up as well, so there's been quite a lot of attention on him, but he really looked the part again yesterday. Christian Doidge is coming back from injury. He got a little bit of spell on the park yesterday. And it's another great asset. He's a massive striker. He's so tall, and he uses his head really well. He's so good in the air. I don't know if you guys spoke about this earlier, but one of the things with Celtic yesterday is that it was just kind of it was so predictable. Yota's delivering great balls into the box, but there's nobody there. Imagine what Celtic would do. I'm not saying we should go and sign Christian Doidge, but you're wanting a guy like Doidge in there, like the Yakimakis kind of mould, that just that other figure, these great balls are there, but Kyogo, he's not going to be winning headers against Liam Gordon and Jamie McCart. He's not. So it's going to be a different Hibs side. I like the addition of Josh Campbell yesterday. That was odd from Hibs. It was kind of a curveball, but he played really well. Josh Doig as well. He's just signed that new contract, that extension. So all his kind of transfer drama hanging over his head, that's gone now. His stability is there. He knows that's where he's going to be plying his trade. But it is going to be a tough game. It's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great final. It's perfect that it's the Bertie Auld final. I think it's it's going to be really, really special. And Hibs deserve to be there at the end of the day. That first half performance yesterday was scintillating stuff. Not many. We were kind of joking about it earlier in the studio that imagine the odds for Martin Boyle to get a first half hat trick, and I went, no, imagine the odds just to get Martin Boyle to get a hat trick yesterday. And this is a guy who I say to you, 35,000 miles he's travelled since the start of October. 81 hours in the air. If he looked leggy yesterday, you went, "Come on, pal." I understand why, obviously, with him playing internationally for Australia, but he came back and how fit did he look yesterday? In stark comparison to Connor Goldson's comments, he had that want to win, and I think Jack Ross has got that mentality within the squad now. That's a massive win for them getting back after this long period of no playing. It's going to be a tricky few weeks for them to kind of play catch up. They may get leggy, but if anyone's like Martin Boyle, then I don't think they will be.
You said all of that, and it was very well put, but you never even mentioned what your thoughts are on Ryan Porteous.
I never even mentioned my thoughts on Ryan Porteous, right? The local lad. Again, and I thought
he's a good lad, Ryan, isn't
he? I thought he had a really, really good game yesterday. Other than the kind of, he's at fault for the goal, but other than that, I thought his second half performance was outstanding. He was so robust, and well, that post-match interview, I just think that's the icing on the cake. He has received ridiculous stick from Steven Gerrard during his time up here. And I think perhaps one of the worst things was that Gerrard never used his name. He'd always say the kid, that lad, Hibs defender. That's disrespectful. I don't care who it is. You know exactly who that is, especially when you've mentioned him so many times or referred to him so many times. I think that was really poor from Gerrard. So, I know a lot of folk won't really like what he done. But you know what? Like I say, he's still really young. He is a local lad around here as well. And I just think he has received a lot of unmerited stick from Gerrard in particular. So a little bit of, reference to that. I think it's all in good faith.
It's all showbiz, isn't it?
It is.
It's all in the showbiz. Now, Tony, I thought that was really well put by Amy. Obviously keeps her eye on the ball when it comes to Scottish football. Chris Fraser's coming in to say that he would sign Boyle and Nisbet. Do you think any of the Hibs boys are on our radar? I know there's been talk about Nisbet many times.
I've said to you before, they should be on your radar because they're right under your nose. And if we've not got APBs out in them, just people reporting back and saying this, and this, and telling Ange, whether or not Ange wants to sign him is another matter. But they should be keeping tabs on guys like Boyle and Nisbet. Boyle and Nisbet did a number on Rangers yesterday. This was supposed to be a foregone conclusion with Gio coming in and everything, and setting up a Celtic Rangers final. And after the first half, it was bump, bump, bump. My goodness, this wasn't meant to happen. And Hibs played really, really well. And Jack Ross just played it down so much. It was a kind of managerial masterstroke where they let Rangers talk about Gio coming in and the new wave after Gerrard and all that, And you all saw what happened. They turned up. Why were Hibs hungrier than Rangers? Golson couldn't put his finger on it. Threw his teammates under the bus a wee bit. With that kind of comment, fine. That these things happen, but you've got to turn up in these occasions. And I re-emphasise and I stress again: can Hibs win the final? Paul Cotwell asked. Of course they can win the final. If they play like that, they've got every chance. Celtic need to be, as I said, ruthless, clinical and efficient, but above all else, they need to be professional in the way they go about their business between now and Christmas and the January window opening. So it's... and I don't think the manager will let them be anything other than those things, but you have to go and win the game. And, they will pose a major threat, and you cannot underestimate Hibs in this final. If you do, you do it to your peril. You saw what the likes of Nisbet and Boyle did to Rangers. Those are the kind of players that can hurt you. And as Amy also said as well, a guy like Doidge coming on and rumbling you up, these are things that Hibs will try to use to their advantage. And they did it to such great effect at Hampden yesterday against Rangers. And if that doesn't give Hibs confidence going into face Celtic in the final, then nothing will. And they'll fancy their chances. But again, I go back to it. Celtic have the better players, and you have to go some to beat both Celtic and Rangers at Hampden on any given occasion. Hibs went some yesterday. Can they repeat it? That's the question that Jack Ross will be asking of his players, and he'll be showing them that DVD between now and the final. But if Celtic are professional in their attitude and they turn up, then they'll win because they have better players. That's the way these these occasions tend to go. But you cannot and should not underestimate the threat and challenge of Hibs.
The thing I'm looking at, trying to look at it outside the bubble, is you've got a manager in Jack Ross here, Amy, who, when you watched what he did at Alloa and St Mirren, you knew he was going to make that step up. I thought the Sunderland Hibs thing was back to front. I thought it would have been Hibs then down south, but he goes down south. And there's this question mark over the big games. Yeah. There's a question mark over the finals, isn't there? Or even the semis with Hibs, in terms of Jack Ross. And you know, we focus on Celtic and what we need to do under Ange Postecoglou, but they've got their own, view on this in terms of getting the monkey off their back. You know, Jack Ross, can he win the big games? Can he win a trophy? Can he take it to the next level in management? And I think they are very dangerous. But the one thing I'm going to hold on to is the fact that they do like to come out and play, and I think that suits Celtic better. Kevin Graham comes in to say he'd rather play Hibs than St Johnstone. I know what he means by that.
So do I, and I think that's a perfect point, that it's going to be a totally different test to what St Johnstone were. You know, St Johnstone chucked 11 men behind the ball. Did they defend with every part of their body? Yeah, they did. And you know what? In some of those games, that's exactly what you want. Will Davidson have been happy with that? Absolutely. Yeah, there was that one moment, obviously it didn't work, but at the end of the day, their job was keep the Celtic ball out of the net, you know. And for 75 minutes, they managed to do that with every ounce of their body, you know, bodies getting chucked on the line, you know, diving into everything, but diving in professionally, not just, you know, clipping guys, properly defending and defending well, real resolute. But, you know, Hibs came out yesterday and they didn't pander to Rangers. They didn't let Rangers get on the ball, play with the ball. You know, Hibs were like, this is our game, and they'll do exactly the same against Celtic. You know, they'll think, well, if they can beat the champions, they can beat Celtic. And that will be the mindset. Obviously, there was that game at the Easter Road, so it is a bit different, but it's a one-off, you know, and a final can go either way. I am really excited for it. I think it's going to be a great game because, and like what Kev's saying, you can have that little bit of optimism because it's going to be two teams going at it, and that does suit Celtic more because there will be spaces in behind, there will be gaps for Jota, there'll be little holes for Kyogo to find himself, and David Turnbull will find areas on the edge of the box because I don't see Hibs sitting in and sitting deep. Because it's not the way that it's not the way that they like to play. It's not the way that Jack Ross wants them to play, because he is building them into this attacking side. You know, there was a few years that Hibs were kind of just grinding out results, but it is about goals now. It's about playing nice football. And before, you know, at the start of the season, that's why Hibs were at the top end of the table, because they were going out and they were playing their game and they were totally wiping sides aside. You know, it was sheer dominance, and they have went through that little bit of a lull before their COVID outbreak, and there are always going to be fans calling for Jack Ross's head because they'll turn it, as you say, Paul, you know, he can't do it in the big games because up until now he's still not really, you know, he's not delivered that trophy. But it's another final, and they've done it in remarkable fashion. You know, that was a breeze for Hibs yesterday. It was an absolute breeze. Second half, Rangers did not lay a glove on them. Connor Goldson absolutely skies the golden opportunity. If he scores that, I wouldn't have been surprised if Rangers came back, because that's the mentality shifts by that point. It's cookie bum time ultimately, and you would think, right, the pendulum swings. But Hibs, you know, outclassed Rangers, and you know you can't underestimate the challenge that they'll possess in the final.
It's another one to look forward to. As Tony says, some big games coming up between now and the 2nd of January. We will cover every kick of the ball, as I say. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. It's Celtic and Hibs fans that have been in the chat today, which is nice on a Monday morning. So thanks, everybody, for getting involved on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. If you haven't done so already, get yourself onto the YouTube channel and subscribe. We've got loads of big content coming your way, both a Celtic State of Mind and other types of content. On Saturday, we interviewed Tony Curran, big Celtic man, Celtic Foundation ambassador, Hollywood actor, and all-round good guy. So we're looking forward to pulling that video together for you as well. So thanks, everybody, for getting involved. All that's left for me to say is thank you to Amy Canavan and Tony Haggerty for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.